Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Process on Tap broadcast, I guess I'll call it. Whether you're watching live or listening as a podcast tomorrow morning, it is Thursday evening slash night. So if you're listening, this might be a Friday for you. But we are back. I feel like we haven't done this in like 3 months or something. For some reason, just like every other month, it just feels like that. But here we are. My name is Jeremy. You can find me on Twitter at Back of the Herd. I am joined by Hansel. You can find him on Twitter at Uber Hansen, and Thomas. You can find him at the Thomas DeLoss. And I just realized I said it's Thursday. It's Friday.
Yep.
uh, I'm finishing up my summer break as a teacher, so I forget what day it is. Honestly, I could tell you like which part of the week it is. I know it's like the beginning or the middle, but I always gotta look at it. So, anyways, here we are. We're gonna talk about some training camp stuff. Hansel and Thomas actually got to be there and see it, so they're gonna kind of share some of their highlights, and we'll talk about some stuff that we've heard that we haven't gotten to see firsthand. But first, something I wanted to talk about last week. We weren't able to record last week, but luckily, like more stuff happened that kind of kept it relevant, and that is the whole Kyler Murray contract situation. Now, I want to say first off, I have zero intentions. I'm going to say it now as like a prelude or whatever. I'm not trying to compare his contract to Josh Allen's. I know this is like a Bills podcast and everyone thinks, oh, like it makes Josh's look so much better. Yeah, I know. It has nothing to do with it. I also want to say I don't think Kyler Murray is a bad quarterback at all. So I'm not trying to like shit on him or anything. But really is what I want to put is first off, the whole extension is Kyler Murray played fine for like 2 years, played pretty well, got his team to the playoffs and played like absolute dog shit, and then whined that he wanted an extension. And I feel like he just threw a tantrum like a toddler, and the Cardinals just gave him what he wanted. I think that's kind of BS. Like, again, I felt like he was a child losing his fit in the store, and the Cardinals finally were like, all right, fine, put the toy in the cart. You can have it. And all the parents are just like, wow, like, you're giving him what he wanted. I don't think he deserved it right now. If I was the Cardinals, I would have been really pressed to like play hard. I was like, no, like let's go one more year. Um, but I don't know. That's just me. That's kind of why I wanted to talk about it. There's a little bit more, but just about the re-signing. What do you guys think about the whole situation, Hansel?
Yeah. I wasn't stunned. I knew it was going to happen. Like of course the Cardinals were going to pay him, but I'm with you. He threw a temper tantrum. The big thing that's come out about him is he's incredibly immature. And we'll get to more of that as this conversation rolls on. But like even before this, he was thought to be incredibly immature. And to like scrub your account of all Cardinals things because you're not getting the money you think you deserve. And again, he thought he deserved it. And then the Cardinals bowed to his will and were like, yeah, sure, we'll pay you. It's incredible. Like it's a bad thing to do. I think in the next part of this conversation, we'll kind of prove kind of what I'm saying here. But as far as Kyler Murray goes, he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson's better than him personally. So to see him get that kind of money, it's like, all right, Lamar's going to get crazy money. But I don't think that Kyler ever is going to be on the level that Allen, Mahomes, Rodgers, Herbert, Burrow, Stafford. Like, I don't think he's ever there. I think he's at that, round 10th best. Like maybe he'll kind of move up and down to like 7th best one year. He'll go to 12th. Like he's never going to be a top tier quarterback. And after that playoff game he had, that was one of the worst playoff performances I've ever seen by a starting caliber quarterback. So to do that, and then by the way, he took himself out of that game. The Cardinals didn't take him out of the game. He's like, nah, I'm done. I don't know how you pay that guy ever. And if you're his teammates and he did that, you're like, dude, you're hanging us out to dry. I'm flabbergasted that he got the contract while also realizing, of course, he's going to get the contract.
Really quick, Thomas, before you give us take Hansel, you said you don't think, Kyler Murray could ever, like, be on like, like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson's level, even with like at the level he was playing at the beginning of the season last year.
Yeah, I think he can. He does it in short bursts, right? Like the big
Mhm.
knock on the Cardinals the past couple of years has been like they start out so hot and then they just
Right.
absolutely fall apart. So like last year, he was playing at a top tier level, but then by the end of the season, he was bad. And by the way, that coincided with the fact that DeAndre Hopkins got hurt. The second Hopkins got hurt, Kyler Murray is probably a bottom 10 quarterback in the NFL, and that says something to me.
Yeah. Fair enough. Thomas, your comments on just the re-signing and the whole.
So the whole situation in of itself is not surprising. I mean, general managers right now, their fear is not having a quarterback and not having a decent quarterback, because it's such a hassle and such a struggle to find one in the first place. So
To be honest, like I kind of feel like Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are even upping the bar. It's like, gosh, I can't even have like a decent one. It's like I almost need a borderline like elite one or
right.
top tier.
And so that's kind of forcing the hands of a lot of general managers, which is kind of making it easier on the quarterbacks and the agents to be able to negotiate these contracts, because at the end of the day, Kyler Murray's agents, all he's got to say is, okay, you don't want to pay us, somebody will, and somebody will pay us handsomely. Most of these teams will back up a Brinks truck to take somebody, because just as soon as if Baltimore lets Lamar walk, which they're not going to do, but for talking point, if they did, another team's going to come flying. A team like Detroit, who doesn't have a quarterback, Cleveland with their mess. There's enough teams in the NFL that'll pay these guys, because no one wants to get stuck with and there's nothing wrong with Davis Mills, but Davis Mills is never going to win you a Super Bowl. Mac Jones is never going to win you a Super Bowl. Tua Tagovailoa, whatever, is never going to win a Super Bowl. It's so they don't want to get stuck in that, because that cycle forever, that matrix is awful. And the Bills did it for 20 years. So if you could find somebody that's at least competent, then maybe you can build enough around it to be a perennial playoff team and squeak one Super Bowl in there. Who knows? But it's not surprising. I like Hansel agree. When it comes to a quarterback, you want your quarterback to not only be the image for your franchise, the face of the franchise, but you want them to be the model. Like you want everybody in lockstep with him. And the problem is with somebody like Kyler, who's a me first guy, it's hard to really. How do you direct that? How do you set? I mean, you kind of have to isolate him on his own, and then find like a stud defensive player or like somebody else on the offense that they could say like, this is your pseudo quarterback, I suppose. Because I mean, you don't want that kind of ilk rubbing off on the rest of the team.
Yeah, and there's been so many reports about his attitude too, and just like Hansel said, how he took himself out of the game, just like, right, I'm sucking, I'm done. But so there's that, and like I said, I kind of thought the story would lose relevance by the time we recorded, and there are football
gift
gods.
That keeps on giving.
There are football gods, and they said, "Oh no, here you go." There was a clause in his contract that has since been taken out. I have no idea why. That he was required to spend 4 hours, was it a week?
Yeah,
watching
a week.
like independent. So on his own, he was required to do 4 hours. Thomas, your wife's a teacher. I'm a teacher. Feel free to ask her how well independent study works. He's an adult. He's an athlete, so maybe that would go better.
I'll say this to that point. With COVID, with all the kids that were home, most of them cheated. Most of them didn't do their own studying and really doing any type of homework or schoolwork when they were home. And it's been very obvious because the Regents testing this year for math, and my wife teaches math, and it's kind of black and white. You know it or you don't know it. You can't really fake it when you're in there. It's bad. So yeah,
there was
independent study does not happen.
There was a meme that someone posted on Twitter. I forgot it, but it went viral. But it was like they put like a mannequin's head in front of like a laptop, and they put like sunglasses, a wig, and a face mask, and you could see a person laying down in bed like behind him. And it's like Kyler Murray doing his independent study. So of course, like that kind of calls, not just his character, but I mean that's like his what would you say? That's
work ethic.
Work ethic into question. And of course, he responds. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to kill myself watching film. And he literally is like, because he said that he like sees things before they happen. And
Spider-Man. Okay.
maybe that's like, I mean, I guess you could argue being a quarterback is like, you're judging and you're like, okay, this is what they're playing. This is probably what's going to happen. So I guess everyone kind of say like, yeah, like, but to say you see things before they happen, no, like you are making like, I would say like preemptive decisions based on what you think is going to happen. But I feel like that's where it's just like, oh, he could see things before they happen. That's cool. He also said, and I really like this line. He said that he spends an incomprehensible amount of time watching film, and I just thought, I was like, oh my God, this is fun. And maybe I'm like overthinking all of this, but I was like, first off, there's 24 hours in a day. Time is pretty comprehensible to most human beings, right? If you said that you watch 27 hours of film a day, that would be incomprehensible to me. It's like, okay, that kind of defies like the parameters that we have set up. That's a little incomprehensible. But if you're like, I spend an incomprehensible amount of time, like, okay, how much time a day? Like 6 hours? I get it. Yeah, my brain did not just explode because you watch 6 hours of film a day. So just to say incomprehensible time, like preparing, Jameis Winston spends incomprehensible time. That dude pretends he's in the pocket while dudes are coming at him with like baseballs and throwing chickens at him. Like, or I haven't seen that, but I bet he's tried it. He has an incomprehensible training regimen. That's fine. But yeah, to say that he spends so much time. Go ahead.
The other way that like that phrase also works both ways too, right? Like incomprehensible can be an extreme amount of time or a very little amount of time. So when I heard him say that, I actually laughed. I was like, an incomprehensible amount of time for an NFL quarterback watching film to me is 0 hours per week on their free time. Maybe he's basically telling us what he actually does, and he doesn't watch film. So that's where I would say that.
But it's smart. He's like, we're thinking the extreme, but really it's like, well, how much time? He's like 20 minutes a day. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't understand that at all. He's like,
I play Madden, and like I see the other team's playbook and see the defenses they run in Madden and all Madden mode. Like, I'm good to go. Let's play. I
think about like Josh Allen, and every summer he's talked about like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm working with like Jordan Palmer with, like I need to work on this. Like he always is like, this is what I need to get better. And I've always wondered, like, are there some athletes that, football players that have a successful season or two, and after that are just like, no, I got it, I'm done. Like, I don't need to do anything anymore. And like, to be honest, like, I wonder if Kyler Murray, that guy, like he got his team to the playoffs. Like he was playing at a high level for the first half and he's just like, nah, I'm good.
So I always, with this point, I always think of like two really like polar opposites, right? Like you've got Jamarcus Russell, who was, I mean, gifted, really, truly, for a guy his size, gifted, but was lazy, like unbelievably lazy. Yeah. And then you have a guy like Tom Brady, who not really like mechanically gifted. He's not a super athlete. He's not really anything. But the one thing he did was he prepared better than anybody. He knew everything. He could read every defense. Still can. And that's when you look at those two things, is I feel like that's kind of status quo, right? You've got the athlete who is undeniably talented but lazy because he's riding on his laurels, or the alternative of the guy who works so hard because he doesn't have everything, and more often than not it pans out because he's been able to find some type of niche, like Ryan Fitzpatrick. He just kind of he was just that journeyman QB. And I feel like with somebody like Kyler Murray, you can kind of tell, he's been bred for success his entire life. He was a baseball player. He's a football player. I'm sure his family is just lauded for being just this ultra athlete, right? Mm-hmm. I think the problem when you get into those scenarios with a guy like him is he believes it, and it's not even just infectious. It's kind of like debilitating to him because he takes it to the nth degree where he doesn't push himself any bit further. The fact that he said he can see a play before it happens. I mean, come on. Like, sure, you're a quarterback and sure you can scramble and make plays. If you could see things happen, you wouldn't be where you are. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be in the scenario that he's in. It would have been when his contract came up, it'd be a surefire 100% sign the dotted line, pay him big money. That was not the case because he hasn't proven to be a definitive quarterback. I mean, he already came in and he's significantly shorter than the average quarterback. I mean, significantly. And so when it comes to that, you got to back it up. And the problem is he's inconsistent. So I just, it'd be one thing if he was just like a Peyton Manning, with the playbook, just literally broke it down every game, cared so much, but he didn't. And the other part about this, which I think is a true testament to who he is. And like, if you look at, like you said, Josh Allen's big thing this year was yard after catch. Last year was that short to intermediate. The year before that, I think it was the deep ball. It rubs off on your team. If your team knows that you don't give a shit and you're not in there studying or whatever, sorry, there's a fruit fly. They know it.
Hey, you can't call them that anymore.
They're not going to take it seriously at all. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to be like, well, screw this guy. He's not a quarterback. We don't want him leading our team. It's not going to draw people. Like, people came to Buffalo. Like, Von Miller came to Buffalo for Josh Allen. No one's want to go to Arizona to play for Kyler, for a guy that's a me first guy who thinks he's smarter than the average pig. Like, whatever.
You could have stopped at Arizona.
True.
That's true.
Yeah. I just want to throw out the only people that can see a play before it happens is Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick, because
they cheated.
But I actually just want to hop in, like, kind of on what Thomas ended there. Like, I do think there's like a big telling point of all of this is not a single Cardinals player has defended Kyler Murray.
Mhm.
Like, I haven't seen one say anything. And I listen to sports radio all day, and I heard a bunch of people call into all these radio shows, and they all use the Bills. They were like, could you imagine if this came out about Josh Allen? Every single Bills player would have gone in front of the mic and said, this is absolutely not true. This guy works harder than anybody. I'll go to war with this man. And we haven't seen a single, not one player that's played with Kyler or used to play with Kyler come out and be like, no, yeah, he watches more than 2 minutes of film a day. And to me, that's incredibly telling. And it's also was telling, like, Kyler had a surprise press conference. Like, he's like, I got to defend myself. And he came out, and what did he do? He listed his accolades, like his personal accolades, not team accolades. Just, this is what I've done. And how could I have done this if I wasn't great at all this stuff? Meanwhile, just kind of pushing it back to the Bills, like Josh Allen in an interview with Albert Breer, they asked him about the Chiefs game. And he said, yeah, we just didn't do enough to win that game. We could have done more. We just didn't do enough. Like, Josh doesn't use the phrase I. He uses the phrase we, because he puts it, he's a part of that team. He's a part of the group that didn't succeed. So to me, like, all of this stuff screams, one, immaturity, and two, to Thomas's point, like, if I'm a free agent, especially a wide receiver or somebody or an older vet that's like, I want to go win a Super Bowl, hell no, I'm not signing with Arizona. Like, I don't want to go play with that guy. Like, it's all about him, and he doesn't put in the work. Like, he just isn't doing the things necessary to win football games at this point in time.
I feel like Kyler probably like texted DeAndre Hopkins like, hey man, can you tweet about like my work ethic, talking me up? And he was like, oh man, like I got locked out because I follow too many people.
I broke my thumbs.
He's like, oh, he's like, I didn't know that could happen. He goes, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Lost my phone.
Yeah. It's like, you're replying to me right now. I'm on my computer. It's gone. Oh, man. Well, I think that's all I have to say about the Kyler Murray. And also, like, another thing, like, kind of going off of Hansel's thing, the clause has been taken out, but when it was mentioned that it was in there, you think you would ask the Cardinals, like, is this in other players' contracts? Like, and I don't think that ever came out. It's like, no, it's only in Kyler Murray's. Like, okay.
This is literally the first time in sports history that this style addendum has been in a player's contract. There's been weight clauses, like you have to maintain the certain weight, but there has never been a private study clause in any sports contract ever.
I mean, there's the Santa Claus. And... Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys heard, they're coming out with the Santa Claus TV show, and Bernard, the guy who played Bernard, is coming back. That's big news.
I did hear.
I did. Breaking
I
news
kinda,
here.
yeah.
Super
But
exciting.
I also kind of feel like it's like if you're gonna get married and your wife puts in a prenup, she's like, I don't want you looking at other women anymore. It's like I don't like I never do. Like, what are you talking about? That's not something I do so much that you have to put that in there. Anyhow,
No
uh,
comment.
Hansel, you actually, this just came up. You tweeted,
Mm.
asking people what is something that they couldn't be like held accountable for doing 4 hours a week. Did you have any answers that stood out?
I mean, everyone said workout or do my
Okay.
job. Like most people had the same things. There was a couple like fold laundry. I was hoping there'd be a couple silly ones, but there really weren't. I actually tried to think like what would I have to be contractually obligated to do for 4 hours a week? There's if people want to pay me to do something for 4 hours a week, I'll do it. Like write me the check. Kyler Murray got $130 million guaranteed, and he just had to watch a TV 4 hours a week. It's not that hard. So
Yeah.
I don't know. This whole story just it baffles me, and it frustrates me because I'm like, dude, you're making more money than God himself, and yet you can't take the time to just be like, all right, maybe I should just see what this defense does so I don't get goofed on Sunday or something.
Yeah, like in a sense, it's like you're getting paid to watch football. I mean, like I don't go back and like rewatch games or anything, but if you said, hey, if you do it for 4 hours a week, I'll pay this, I'd be like, okay, done. And it's like that's fine because I like football. Like I don't have like the urge to like rewatch it and break it down like some people do, which is fine because nobody comes to me for those takes, which is it's all good.
I
But
feel like he would just
I
be
would absolutely do it.
watching. I feel like he'd just be watching his own footage, and
That's a
like
good point.
it would just be like nonstop him running in circles, and it would just be like nothing of like consequence because he's not. It's not as though like he's a technician per se, he's just an average guy. And I was trying to cue this up, so it was like when he's just running in circles, that's all you would hear. But I don't know. Kyler Murray to me just screams not only prima donna, but it just kind of just that quarterback. Like not anybody. Like I wouldn't take him in maybe I'd take him in fantasy for the sheer fact that he can run a lot. But like I don't know. Like screw him.
Speaking of like watching a Kyler Murray run, you brought up the music. Whenever I see him run, I think of like a Super Nintendo Luigi for some reason. Like when he jumped, his legs like did this little like flutter, and his hands right here. Like I always think of that whenever I see Kyler Murray run. Even though Luigi's the taller brother, that doesn't really track. But I don't know why that's what I think of when I see Kyler Murray run.
What's up, Chris?
Yes, Chris Janky. I'm sorry if I forget how it's pronounced. Let me know, like spell it out how you're supposed to say it. Anywho, so that's enough of Kyler Murray. Maybe there'll be more next week on him. But so we're gonna talk about training camp now. And as we mentioned, Hansel, Thomas, you guys saw the first two.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, and so I just asked you guys to kind of come with your like highlights, your own highlights. So we'll kind of go back and forth. But before that, can you remind everybody like the benefits like with training camp? Because people said like that training camp favors the defense. So can you kind of talk about that and certain things to not get not to overreact to?
So one thing that if you're not there, which I highly suggest, if anybody has a chance to go to training camp, it is well worth it. It is really cool. You're very close to the players. I mean, when Hansel and I were walking out down the ramp, Josh had come over to see his girlfriend, Brittany. I mean, they were like spitting distance, very, very, very close. But the big thing you got to know is, defense is obviously going to succeed. The offensive linemen, they're not doing anything. It's like a giant, a giant cone standing in the road.
Quick, like when a play happens, like there's an O-line, D-liner, they just kind of like
it's just right, like two little fairy hand fighting. They don't do a whole lot, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, the wide receivers and the DBs, the only people that are going to win those battles are the wide receivers that are shifty or twitchy because they're able to get in and out of their breaks really quick and kind of, Josh gets them to where they need to be. But outside of that, you're seeing guys like an Isaiah Hodgins, and I wrote him down, that weren't really succeeding. His hands are not great, and that he doesn't really have the ability to kind of break loose, or, he's not a separation guy. He's more of a possession receiver. But yeah, it's for the actual camp itself, it definitely lends itself to defense, just because they can get all up in the wide receiver's face without actually physically getting too aggressive with them. And not to mention, with the new offensive playbook, they're still installing some stuff. They said it's not going to be all brand new, and it's going to be at least some similar schemes, but they're still tweaking things, a little bit of language. There's some new players on offense. You've got Khalil Shakir, Isaiah McKenzie picking up more role, Jamison Crowder, James Cook. There's a lot of guys in there that are still learning some terminology, so it's going to take a little bit more time. And they even said it wasn't on Tuesday, but I believe it was I think it was Thursday, because they were off Wednesday. Josh was a little frustrated. Things weren't going really to plan. Or no, was it? I don't know. Whatever it was, Josh was frustrated. So you can tell things aren't going exactly, but it'll catch itself up.
Yeah, and to kind of like echo what Thomas was saying there, like one thing on defense that kind of really stood out to me, or defense offense, like in those battles. So the reason we talk about this is because what people tweet out or say is like, oh, Josh just threw another interception. Oh, like the offense is struggling and all this stuff. And yeah, like I even tweeted out actually on the opposite end, like Kaiir Elam was getting ripped by Stephon Diggs on every play. But regardless of all of that, so if you just take like a pure 11-on-11 drill that the Bills were running, so it's 11 defenders, 11 offensive players, like typical, the Bills would go 5 wide, and then the defense would quote unquote rush 4 defensive linemen. What you have then is you essentially are playing 7-on-5, because the defenders aren't worried about the run. There is no run. Like Josh isn't going to scramble in practice. What's the point in practicing scrambling? Josh is essentially trying to throw to a spot his receiver is going to be. So these DBs can sit back and not have to worry about the run. There's no play action. There's no motion. Like it's just so favors the defense that it's almost impossible for even the best quarterbacks to succeed in those situations. On top of that, and kind of talking about the offensive line, so one thing that also kept coming up on Twitter and in other places, rightfully so, because it was literally occurring, was the defense was constantly getting pressure on Josh Allen. There was defensive ends, there was defensive tackles, always in the face of the quarterback, whether it was Allen or Keenum or whoever. Of course there's going to be. The offensive linemen literally cannot use their hands or grab pads. Like the offensive line, as an offensive lineman, you're taught to get your hands into the defender, into his pad. You're essentially taught to hold them. The offensive lineman can't do that when there's no pads on. So they essentially sit there like a traffic cone and just are like, yeah, don't run by me. You can't hit the quarterback anyway. So it's all kind of just this song and dance that you watch. And for that reason, I think that you have to kind of read between the lines when you're watching training camp. And that's what I learned from my first training camp is you're looking for moments and you're looking for flashes and you're looking for not the big name players to do what they're supposed to be doing, because they always do what they're supposed to do. You're supposed to be looking at a Cam Lewis, a Khalil Shakir, an Isaiah Hodgins, like those guys that you're like, what do they bring that's unique to this team? And what are they doing in these drills where either they're at an advantage or a disadvantage? Are they succeeding in kind of beating out that disadvantage, or are they failing when they have the advantage? And those are the things that I was kind of trying to focus on as best as I could.
All right. Well, so Chris actually mentioned he was at training camp today. So at the end of the show, if we have time, I was thinking maybe I'll send him a link and he can jump on and share some highlights. So Chris will kind of give you a heads up, towards the end. So right now we're just kind of talking about so far. But so like I said, both of you guys brought your own little highlights, and you'll just kind of go back and forth. And if you have a similar one, just piggyback. So Thomas, you're looking at your notes.
Yeah.
What's your first thing?
Gabe Davis is really impressive.
Oh yeah,
I know it's been a very big point, but the reason I wrote that first is it's a lot of it really was, and Hansel and I had spoken to this, was it's hard to quantify whether or not people think he's going to translate from that Chiefs game into the season, because you're talking between Emmanuel Sanders and Beasley. There's well over 100 snaps that need to go somewhere, and Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have vocally said it's time. It's Gabe Davis. Like, they feel comfortable with Gabe Davis stepping into that number 2 role. And I said it multiple times on my show this past week. I said it with Nick Harrison. I very, very much believe that you're going to see a very similar situation to Peerless Price and Eric Moulds with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. Stephon Diggs can still be very successful. And at camp, when I was with Hansel, and then the day before, Diggs is tearing it up. The guy is, Hansel said it best. You don't realize how good Stephon Diggs is until you see him in one of these type of scenarios. He's just, actually one thing that we talked about, and, I had brought up, and Hansel's like, man, that actually is a really good point. They talk about all pro. I said they should have an all elite, and that should be that, like, that upper class of, like, you have to be in that top 1 percentile to get there. And that's what Stephon Diggs is. Like, everything just looks smooth. It looks crisp.
Last offseason, like, he posted, like, there were some videos of him just, like, practicing, like, running routes. And I felt like I was watching, like, Michael Jackson dance. I was just like, whoa,
right.
Like, how did he do that? Like, that was cool. Like, it's crazy.
Right. And so to my parallel with Gabe Davis, he makes it very easy for Gabe because, pretty much they shade coverage to Diggs because you can't single coverage Diggs. It doesn't happen. He's just too good. He's too clean with his routes. And he's very, very kind of like Stevie Johnson was back in the day, where Stevie Johnson would kind of freestyle his routes. Diggs does that, but he doesn't freestyle his routes. He freestyles his movement. He freestyles the way he gets in and out of breaks and the way he shimmies and shakes off defenders. So he's able to shade that defense over to him, which allows Gabe Davis to really terrorize teams, because Gabe Davis is a big dude. He's put on weight. He looks not only bigger, but leaner, which makes zero sense. And for some reason, amongst all of that, he seems faster. Yeah. So when you saw him out there, I really think he's going to have a monster year. If he looks any bit, and he's not, the thing about it is, the one thing that I keep going back to is, it's not as though our offense is going against a scrub defense. Our offense is going against the number 1 defense from last year, and they've added to it. They didn't subtract to it. They didn't lose any of their stars. They added Von Miller. They added Tim Settle. They added Jordan Phillips. They added Shaq Lawson. They added. So you're going against even better caliber defense, and still they looked good very early on. So I think he was somebody, if you watched him, very, very clean. When he's running his routes, very clean. His hands, it just looks like it sucks right in there. I think it's hard not to talk big about him because he looked very, very good.
All right. So you're saying Gabe Davis is good.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I'm going to echo Thomas. Like, when you see him in person now, he looks different. He looks like, it is weird. He looks like a muscly freak, but he also looks slimmer. He just looks like that. I actually saw somebody compare him. I forgot who it was. He's technically bigger right now than DK Metcalf. I don't know how that's possible. He's bigger than DK Metcalf. I'm not saying he is the physical freak that DK. I guess weight-wise, he's bigger right now.
Yeah,
and that's not fat because the dude looks like he's solid muscle, but he also just looks special right now. And that's literally Diggs to me at training camp. And
also, really quick, I have to cut you off. Like, when you looked at Gabe Davis, did you get Matt Milano feelings a little bit?
Oh no, only Matthew gives me those feelings. Only Matthew.
You went with the full name,
but it was good. But the thing I wanted to go back to Diggs is because what I tweeted out while watching it is, like, how good Stephon Diggs is when he stands out among some of the world's best players. Like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer on the field. They're both all pros last year. Josh Allen is an absolute Adonis of a quarterback. And then you have, Von Miller and Deion, all these people. Stephon Diggs stands out. Like when he's on the field, you can see him just because he looks different than everybody else in the way he plays football. He's just better than everyone else. And the hope is that Gabe Davis can be 75% of that or 70% of that. And if he is, I don't really understand how you're going to stop those two because you're only going to be able to double one with Josh's legs. So yeah, Thomas, 100%. I 100% agree with you. Like Gabriel Davis does look like everyone says he's looked this whole entire offseason. He looks bigger, stronger, faster, better in every single way. Like he is going to be a bona fide number 2 on the Bills team. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year, you see people talk about him as a guy that on 25 other teams would be the number 1. Like he could be that good.
Sounds like Kelvin Benjamin.
A little different.
Sorry, it's like the off-season things that you always hear. There's like always that one player. It's like, oh, he's bigger, stronger, and faster than ever. And then you see like Kelvin Benjamin in the second year of the Bills, and you're like, what the hell? Like, this is the bigger, stronger, faster Kelvin Benjamin. Like, this is awful. Hansel, what's your next highlight?
Yeah, so I guess the one that I wanted to bring up that is kind of upsetting, but also expected to me was the very first day of practice. It almost felt like it went on for an hour. It was a punt battle between Matt Araiza, however you say it, and Matt Hawk. And that went on literally for an hour. It was just punt after punt, both of them going. I thought it would be the whole practice, but they did stop at some point. Matt Hawk looked better to me. He looked more precise. He was kicking a really good ball, and he was bombing the ball. That's not to say that Ariza didn't have his moments where it was like, holy jeez, that thing. He like bombed a couple 85-yarders in the air. Like I forgot what line they were kicking from. He was kicking them out of the back of the end zone. So the leg is there. Like he has an absolute monster leg, just like everyone thought. The question is, will he be able to find that precision where he can stick them in a corner, where he can, pin them inside the 20? My personal take on this is I don't fucking care if he can stick them in the corner. Kick the ball out of the back of the end zone every time and put them on the 20-yard line. If I am assured that the furthest they will ever start is the 20-yard line, that's better than Matt Hawk, who against the Jets had 3 punts in a row that were under 25 yards. Like, I don't trust that dude. And he could be better right now in this training camp with no pressure coming at him. But after what I saw last year, done with him. Give me this punt god that I know can bomb the ball further than anybody basically on the face of the earth. And look, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, like if he's not a great punter, we'll just never punt again. And then everything works out.
But bring up the stat you told me, Hansel, about the holding, because that's important.
Yeah. So I have seen this kind of flip as training camp's going on. But I have not verified this stat. I forgot exactly who said it. But on the first day, they did some holding. So Ariza was holding and Hawk was holding. Tyler Bass kicked 20 balls, 10 with each holding. He missed 6 field goals. All 6 were when Ariza was holding. So that means Bass went 4 of 10 with Ariza. He went 10 of 10 with Hawk. Again, I haven't verified that to be the case. I saw this on Twitter. I forgot who tweeted it out. I have heard since that they've done more holding. And I think Sal Capaccio tweeted like they did 10 holds for Ariza. He made all 10 kicks. And Tyler Bass is quoted as saying they're both holding well. Of course, he's not going to throw anyone under the bus. But I do think that is going to be an important part of camp because, again, as much as like it's fun to have the punter that can kick the ball further than anybody, the Bills shouldn't be punting that often, but they should be kicking very often, extra points. So
we shouldn't even get the 4th down often. How about that?
Yeah. And even if we do get to 4th down, just give Josh the ball. He'll get the first.
Yeah.
So,
I want to mention, because I heard this on the Locked On Bills, Joe Marino, and I wanted to mention because I haven't seen it on Twitter at all, but he actually had a training camp stat that Ariza held 8 times for Tyler Bass, and Tyler Bass made all 8 of them, ranging from like the 25-yard line to the 50-yard line. So you mentioned like 10 and 10. I heard that on Joe Marino. I feel like he would give us a accurate stat, but So yeah, I thought that was interesting to point out because you haven't seen it a whole lot. Maybe some people just aren't as interested in punting as we are. I don't know. But all right. So next, Thomas, your next highlight.
And I'm gonna razz Aaron Quinn for this because I think it's hilarious. Aaron I think he hates Isaiah McKenzie, truthfully. No, I'm just kidding. Isaiah McKenzie, man, I keep bringing up Hansel because he was sitting next to me, but everywhere that Josh was, Isaiah was in his back pocket, literally because he can fit, and because I think he wants to be right with Josh the entire time. It's becoming more and more apparent, and I said this back when we did the projections, multiple different things, different episodes we went through, that Isaiah Crowder's health is going to be a serious issue, that his soft tissue history is going to be a serious issue. And it's at this point, it's something of note. Yeah, obviously.
We didn't practice the second day, right?
Correct. Right. So we're still
already. Hey, kid.
Right. We're still going into this. I mean, it's early, but if it progresses, it's something obviously to keep tabs on.
Your cat jumped up and was like, "Ah, shit, Bills talk." Nah.
She's all over the place. She was rubbing my feet earlier.
What's her name?
Betsy. She's cute as a bun. But yeah, Josh literally was always with Isaiah, but you can just tell, man, Isaiah looks. I mean, the one thing I could say with Isaiah, and I heard this the other day, the stat that Isaiah's been there since Josh's rookie season, which I completely forgot that Isaiah's been here this long. He just he just happens to be here every time. Every time you turn around, he's still at the house. He's like that friend that you invite over and you just think he's leaving, but he's just, every time you turn around, he's still there. He's like Josh in the sense that he has gotten better every year. And I want to think that he knew Beasley being gone meant, okay, the door is open, like wide open now. And I think he spent this offseason taking it every bit as seriously because he looks good. Not like, and I always question this. I said this before. Why is he not getting more attention? What, like I even brought up on the show, I said, why do people think he's not fast? Like why are we not talking
fast?
You said that exact. We can literally repeat the episode. You said the exact same thing. He is I'll tell you, he just seems so the part right now. Like Gabe Davis, it would not surprise me with Isaiah McKenzie if he's wide receiver 3, is the slot receiver starting opening day. He just seems to know exactly where to be. He looks the part of a veteran receiver. He knows where he wants. And the things I wrote down for McKenzie, insanely quick. And when I say quick, he may not be fast, but he's quick. Like right off the bat, everything's just very, very, very bursty. He's very twitchy, and he definitely has a true handle on the wide receiver 3. I think he has the world in front of him this year, and he's one of those guys that I could see getting like 800 yards and 8 touchdowns this year, and it wouldn't even surprise me for what he's at.
So my question is, like, why now? Like, has he had this talent, but the Bills are like, no, we have Cole Beasley, so we're just going to give him the snaps?
Part of me wonders, and so I somebody said this today when I was listening. I can't remember where I was listening, but somebody said they thought, and I think it might have been WGR, that they wonder with Dable, if Dable was a Moss guy, and Coach McDermott's like, no, you're running Singletary. You screw Moss. Like, you need to, and that's why they drafted James Cook. Part of me wonders if Dable didn't trust McKenzie, or there was something there, because McKenzie has, every time they've been in a pickle and he's had to go and play, he's flashed, and he's flashed big, and he's always come up large. He had those drops on punts, but I mean, the only person that's really been sure-handed is Micah Hyde. Everybody else has had their issues. So that, I think that's kind of irrelevant to this point, but McKenzie just always comes up big. And I have never been able to figure out why the guy has never gotten more of an opportunity, because quite frankly, this team is kind of devoid of any type of true speed. And he's that, because like they brought in Marquez Stevenson, who is as boring as a pair of pantyhose. Like, just I don't get what, like, and he's not fast. He was brought in because of his speed. And Hanzo can tell you, we even spoke on it when we were there. Watching him is just, it's like, why? He doesn't even, he's not special at all. Like, he's really just nothing. So I never understood. And I will absolutely bang the table for Isaiah McKenzie, man. I think this kid could have, like I said with Gabe, I think he should get a shot. He looks really good. I mean, Chris Janke said the same thing. He was everywhere at camp today. He was targeted a bunch. He caught everything thrown his way. I don't know, man.
Well, when you say, about his speed, I feel like, I mean, Bean, McDermott, one of them, they said it. They said when it comes to wide receivers, they want guys who can get open and catch the ball. So to me, it feels like they value, it's like, like route running and separation. Like, speed is great, but if you can't get open, then what good is it? So that's kind of my question with McKenzie is like, the people who are going back. I know you guys, you're watching training camp in real time. I don't know if you took video and watched it later. Like, how well is he like running those routes, like at the slot position? Like you said, Chris Janke said he's targeted a bunch, caught everything. It sounds like the Patriots game. He was targeted 12 times and he caught 11 passes. And some of those passes were like, he was reaching for him. And they weren't just like, oh, I'm wide open and you're putting it right in my chest. Like, he was like actually like reaching for him and catching him. But again, once Beasley was healthy, the team was like, nope, he's the slot guy. So yeah, like it'll just be kind of like interesting. It's like, as McKenzie kind of had this the whole time, but they were just trusting the veterans because that's just what they had.
Right. I'm not entirely sure, but man, the one thing that I keep going back to is there was an interview with Brian Scott, and Brian Scott is part of that choir that Isaiah McKenzie is part of that was on AGT, America's Got Talent. And the one thing that Brian Scott said was, with Isaiah, he's the guy that's always like, no, we're going to do it again. It needs to be it needs to be better. It needs to be perfect. And that truthfully, I think, is what it comes down. Hold on one second. My mic's bad. I apologize.
No worries. Chris says that he's getting open with Taron Johnson and Cam Lewis covering him. He's getting open with Taron. I've also heard like Taron Johnson sticking with him as well. So, I mean, bravo to both. I mean, the fact that Taron Johnson can keep up with someone that fast, but also that McKenzie can get open with a slot receiver as good. I mean, I like both those things. So,
yeah, I'll go on. So, I'm not as high on McKenzie as Thomas is, but I do think that he's having a very good camp. I do think he could have a pretty good season. I just wonder if that's what the Bills want out of the slot, is that because of how quick he is and because of how fast, like quick out of his breaks he is, like he's more of that sweeping slant. So if you go actually look at his on Next Gen Stats, you go look at his routes against the Patriots, they're like arcs. They're not crossing. Like, yeah. And I think that there's a massive amount of value in that, especially with the two outside guys that the Bills have in Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. Like those crossing routes, those arcing crossing routes could be really dangerous because he's going to be one-on-one and he can just break zones doing that. So there's an immense value in that. But at the same time, and I've said this since this end of last season, or not since the end of last season, but since it happened, I do have some concern about the loss of Cole Beasley just because he's the pressure release valve. And I don't think that McKenzie's main thing is he's so quick when he gets on a line that he can just beat you on the line. McKenzie, to me, and everything that I've seen of him, he doesn't have the feet Cole Beasley does. And I don't think that many people in the world have the feet Cole Beasley do, where he can basically create a spot in a zone, like just find a single spot and get to it. So for that, the guy that actually excited me in the slot is Khalil Shakur. Like he looks good. I did tweet this out and I talked to Thomas about this and we even retweeted it out again. It's like, he looks super clunky when he runs. Like, I don't know what it is. He looks like his legs aren't working properly. And actually Banged Up Bills even responded like, I need to go back and look at his injuries because it looks like he's laboring, like something's wrong, but there is nothing wrong. Like he's fine. It just looks weird. So the one thing though, in watching him, he's super crisp on his routes, and his hands are crazy sticky. I think it was like, God, I don't know. One of the beat writers said it. Said like he's unique for a rookie wide receiver. Most rookie wide receivers you'll see are catching the ball into their chest, and you become a professional wide receiver when you start catching away from your chest with your hands. And Shakur is doing that right now on every single
They should
ball.
teach him that in college.
They should, yeah. And the crazy thing is, also think of the situation that he's in. He's not with noodle-armed Mac Jones or noodle-armed Tua Tagovailoa, where it's easy, just like, oh yeah, I'll pluck it out of the air. He's got a freaking rocket launcher coming at him that he has to catch, and he's just snagging every ball. So
like you have to catch it, or else you might die.
Yeah, exactly. To me, I think Shakur might sneak in and take that slot spot. I still am thinking Crowder can do it, but the injury, I'm getting more and more concerned about that. One thing I'll say though, for McKenzie is I actually just pulled up his contract because I was interested in this. I think McKenzie might surprisingly get the shot at slot 1 this year. Reason being, like, his cap, it really isn't that like difficult to maneuver. And next year, in reality, and I'm not saying they should, in reality, they could cut him and they save $2.2 million. So maybe Shakur is the long-term plan and McKenzie's the short-term plan. Again, just speculating. Don't think that's going to necessarily happen. Not saying I want that to happen. I do think, though, you're going to see a lot of packages that have McKenzie on the field. I think you see him more this season because he is a weapon. Like, he does have abilities and unique abilities that can break defenses, especially if you get him mismatched on a cornerback that just doesn't have the speed to keep up with him.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about McKenzie really quick and go back to Shakir because with McKenzie, like at the end of the season, I was thinking like, man, like was McKenzie like a Dable like player, or was that someone McDermott wanted? And I was curious if he was going to go to the Giants with Dable. But the fact that he was re-signed made me think, okay, like maybe Dorsey also sees like his value, and so he brought him back. But back to Shakir, I feel like a lot of people are talking about Khalil Shakir as a sleeper in a way because he was drafted in the 5th round, and that's like day 3, right? Like, oh, like he's a day 3, he's a 5th round pick, like he's a sleeper. But he was mocked and projected so much in like the 3rd or 4th round. If he was taken there, then so many people be like, oh, like he's the slot guy, like he is going. But I just feel like just because of where he was drafted, it's like shifted like his story from like sure thing to sleeper. Like he's the same player, like he's the same guy, like everybody's been clamoring over all off season. It's just the fact that when they put his draft round like as a label, like that suddenly just changes the narrative despite him being projected like as high as it was.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, to be completely honest, I didn't know much about him when the Bills drafted him. I had heard his name. And each draft season, I do something I call the mock of mocks, and I take over, I think I got over 120 mock drafts this year of the first round in particular, and then just kind of combine them all in an Excel sheet and spit out something. I saw him mocked a couple times in the first round, like a couple times out of 120. So it was really rare, and there was a couple other names that were mocked in the first round that never were going to go. But the Bills had a 4th round grade on him. They said he's a 4th round wide receiver. We want him in the 4th round. They had to trade up to get James Cook using a 4th round pick. And they essentially were like, shoot, we lost him. And then when he fell to the 5th, they traded back up again because they're like, he's worth a 4th round pick. So to me, the Bills.
Did they trade back in the 2nd and pick up James Cook?
Or maybe they trade. Sorry, I think the 4th was to get Elam then.
Elam, yeah.
That might have been what it was. But the one like super interesting about this is the last player they had a 4th round grade on and drafted in the 4th round was Gabriel Davis. So there seems to be some sort of eye for talent in the 4th round, and maybe Shakur is that talent. I was really impressed by him, and I, again, wasn't super high on him, wasn't super low, just didn't really know much about him. But when you see him in person, outside of those super clunky running style, he does look really good, especially for a rookie wide receiver.
Like I purely just knew him just from mock drafts and people talking about him, so I'm not acting like I was familiar. That's all I knew. It was kind of like Zach Moss. I heard so much talk about Zach Moss. I was like, okay, he sounds cool. I hope we draft him, and we did. It's like awesome. My online friends like this guy. Great. I forgot where we left off, where we're going. Whose turn is it? And do we have
So
something new, or does
I'm just
anybody
going to
wanna
follow
take
up
that?
on Khalil Shakir real quick to his point. I think Shakir, like you said, I think he doesn't look like a rookie is the weird part.
Yeah.
You know, when you watch him, he's just very confident. And the other thing is he's very eager to learn. You know, you saw him always kind of pick in the ear of either Diggs or Davis or McKenzie. And they all kind of rally around. Like I remember, you know, Shakir made a really nice catch. Davis came out of nowhere to dab him up. So it's definitely a close knit group. But yeah, the weird thing is, and I said this, and actually, you know, Chris Janke just said it, but at practice, you know, Hansel had said he just runs very clunky, and he's like, you know, it's just I don't know. And I said he looks like Robert Woods. Like that's what to me, what he looked like Robert Woods, and he had mentioned it to somebody else, and that person said he looked like Robert Woods. Chris Janke said he looked like Robert Woods. I'm hoping
I've seen that a couple
if
times too.
if he turns out to be Robert Woods, I mean that's a hell of a threesome
Wonderful.
for wide receivers, you know, with Diggs, Davis, and Shakir. The one thing that's interesting with him is he's not small like a slot receiver though. He's a good sized receiver. So it's actually like a nice change of pace. He's not Isaiah Hodgins big, but he's not, you know, Crowder McKenzie small either. So he's got a little bit of size to him, which is nice. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where he could go. You know, like Hansel said, you know, him being a 5th round pick, you never know what you're going to get, but the Bills have been damn good with those middle round picks. You know, you had Gabe Davis, who was a 4th, and Hansel's baby, you know, Matt Milano was a 5th. So
I have a question. Like I was seeing this on Twitter, and I was hoping one of you can kind of explain it. You've mentioned how he doesn't look like a rookie. I believe like Anthony Prohaska from Cover One was saying like he has like soft, natural hands. For someone like me who just doesn't, you know, watch film or like break anything down, like what does that like mean? Like what about him, like when he catches a ball, just looks different?
it's one of those things that like when you're watching a wide receiver, like some receivers, like I wrote down Isaiah Hodgins, and the one thing I wrote about him on here was is disappointing, not impressive hands. It just when you watch him, it's not, it's almost like kind of like fluffy like a cloud. Like the ball just kind of just like sucks right in, and he just looks like very natural at it. It doesn't look like it's laboring when it comes to him catching anything. He's not bobbling. He's not trying to bring it in or try to, you know, finesse the ball. It just, he knows where to be, and the ball just goes, and it goes exactly where it's supposed to be. I would say he's
ball tracking too, right? Not just like catching.
Yeah.
Right. And that's actually one thing I wrote on here about Khalil Shakir. I said, doesn't look like a rookie, clean catching, tracking, great route running, very decisive. And he has all those little attributes that make him like a seasoned vet when it comes to not only catching the ball, but, you know, when it comes to like the act of catching the ball. Because the thing about it is, anybody can catch a ball, but a wide receiver catching a ball, a good wide receiver, it's very, very different. It's I don't know. It's weird, man. It looks, it's like Diggs. How the ball, like when he catch, like the couple times he's caught overside, it just kind of just like it somehow like magically appears there. That's how it looks like. You know, with Shakir, it just sticks. It's crazy.
Yeah. And when he's running, like, right, so essentially you want a perfect pass from Allen's, like, right kind of in front of him where he catches it in stride and he keeps going. Like, that's what you want of your quarterback every single play. Peyton Manning couldn't even do that every play. Like, no quarterback does that every play. There's essentially like a catch radius. You have to put it somewhere in there, and you expect your receiver to catch it. He's going to catch those balls. But more than anything, the thing that I saw him do is he's running, let's say he's running a slant and the ball's in front of him. He'll catch it with his 2 hands. He brings it in and he'll keep going. It doesn't look like he misses a beat. But more importantly is when the ball isn't right in front of him, maybe it's at his head instead of like in front of where he's running. He'll get his hands up. He catches it in front of his head, and it just, again, sticks to his hands. And then he's still going. Like, there is no difference where he catches it. where most rookie wide receivers, one, you're not going to see them catch it with their hands every time. You're going to see it come they're going to bring it straight into their chest. And two, you might see a little delay in that run. So if the ball isn't exactly where it's supposed to be, I have to adjust. I have to catch this ball, and then I keep running. With Shakir, it's just boom, go. There isn't a delay.
I joked earlier about, they should teach him to catch it with their hands in college. And again, this is just like my ignorance because I don't watch, but why is that concept, catch it with your hands, not your chest, something they have to suddenly pick up in the pros and not through high school, college?
So I honestly, I don't watch much college football, but the one thing that's always stuck out to me was, and this is very unique, but when Johnny Manziel played, people were smitten with Johnny Manziel. We're like, he's so fun to watch. He's so good. And I watched a few Johnny Manziel games that year just because college football is on in the background. And every time I watch him, I'm like, what is this? He's not good. This is a joke, right? How is everyone acting like he's good? I think Mike Evans was on his team at the time. And all it was throw the ball as high as I can in the air and Mike Evans would go catch it. There was no essentially run and catch in traffic. It was just all right, I'm going to throw the ball in the air and you'll go get it. Or you're just so much better than the DB covering you. You're wide open to a point where I just have to lob the ball and you'll just catch it and go. I think, at least from what I watched in college football, the little I watched of it, it's just you don't have the precision there. And there's no need to have the precision because most of the defensive backs you're playing, and if you're a good quarterback, you tend to have good wide receivers on your team in college. That's not always the case. Look at Josh Allen. His best wide receiver was Tanner Gentry. But for the most part, you have good wide receivers that are just going to beat the DBs of every other team. So the wide receivers essentially don't have to catch the ball in stride because they're not playing up to their level of competition.
And there was one really, really impressive catch by Shakir. He was doing a slant right over the middle, and I believe I want to say it was Case Keenum that threw the ball, but it was a solid almost 5 feet behind him. And Shakir literally adjusted and caught the ball behind him and still kept going.
Yeah.
So it was just very clean. His route running is proficient, and especially for a guy, Boise State's not a big college, but he looks like he came out of a big conference and that he played big time competition because he's playing it. Like I said, with Gabe Davis, he's playing against big time talent because the Bills, they're very, 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 they're deep on defensive back. So even if he's playing the second and third string, a lot of those guys are backups to starters on other teams.
Yeah.
All right. So we're at about an hour. Chris, I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to be able to squeeze you in, but if you guys want to just do one more, each of your highlights to just throw in, and we'll kind of wrap it up. So pick one we haven't mentioned, unless you're both out.
I got one.
One more. Go ahead, Thomas.
Tim Settle is awesome. I love Tim Settle. One, and Hansel and I said this, he is absolutely an energy guy. He's a team guy.
I heard that his personality is
super infectious.
Yeah.
When Nick McLeod had a couple interceptions, Tim Settle literally ran down to the other end of the field to dap him up. He was up and down all over the place, always in the backfield. That dude is everybody said it. I talked to a lot of not Redskins, but Commanders friends or Commanders.
I don't know how to bleep stuff out, so make sure you don't do that.
Sorry, my apologies. A lot of Commanders fans, and they even said they're like, man, they did not want Tim Settle to leave because they saw him and they knew how talented he's going to be. I think they're 100% right, dude. I think we have a gem here, a guy that could absolutely be a disruptor. You put him next to Ed Oliver. I don't know if Daquan Jones is going to be able to hold off Tim Settle because from what I saw, Tim Settle he just looks scary, man. First off, he's a big dude. The dude's the size of a refrigerator. Hansel even said it because we were looking at guys and kind of pointing out who's as big, which one. Markel Lee is massive. He's as big as Daquan Jones, and Daquan Jones is massive too. But Tim Settle he's the size of a refrigerator box. His shoulders are big. He's massive. He's a big guy, but his penetrating style as a one tech is just,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. He's super duper impressive.
Isn't he kind of like a hybrid? I've heard he can kind of do like 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he is more of a pass rushing defensive tackle. Similar to like what Ed Oliver does, but he can also play that one tech that kind of run stuffing, kind of gap integrity, have to double team type of guy. But that's good. That's what you want. Like if you're in a scenario at the end of a game, or when you need to stop up Pat Mahomes like in 13 seconds, that's what you want.
Yep.
You want 2 guys coming up the middle and 2 guys coming out the side that are going to frustrate the hell out of guards, cause the tackles to collapse, and just make that pocket mush. That's what you want. And Tim Settle's that type of guy. And on top of that, the other parts of Tim Settle, which I think is super important, is like with Josh. You need those guys that when Buffalo gets cold as shit, he's the guy that's going to uplift the rest of the team and get them going, and keep them in the game and keep them moving, because sometimes those games are, when it's tough like that, or it's a game that's just beating the shit out of you, it takes a toll on a team, and you need players like that to keep that high energy going.
Yeah, I pulled up his pre-draft measurables, and yeah, his pre-draft measurables, he weighed 329, almost 330, and Daquan Jones, his pre-draft was 322. So yeah, he's absolutely got the size, like you said. So that was kind of my question when we signed him. Is he a 1 or 3? And people said it looked like he could do both. And it sounds like Daquan Jones is absolutely a 1 tech, I would say.
Yeah.
And
Right.
which sounds safe because we have Jordan Phillips and Ed Oliver, and I think we definitely seem good at that. So, Hansel, one more highlight to throw in?
Yeah. So my highlight's more just like an overarching thing was, so we sat there a little bit after practice ended on Monday, so the second day of camp. And the one thing I love to see was so many of the undrafted rookies or late round picks stayed on the field and put in extra work. Like we're just out there doing things. Raheem Blackshear, who's a undrafted running back, his only path to the roster is punt return. Like he would have to win the punt return job, which he probably won't, but he knows that's his path. He was out there catching punts. Just him. They were using the jugs machine, shooting him punts. Jalen Weidermeyer, undrafted tight end, was in the middle of the field, just basically working on blocking sets. So essentially getting out of his stance, getting into a blocking thing. Balin Spector, I forgot who he was with, they were doing linebacker drills. So these guys, it kind of speaks to the culture that the Bills have produced. They've produced a culture that's you got to put in the work to kind of succeed. And to see these guys that have been here for a minute, right? They haven't been here forever. They're not Micah Hyde and Poyer that have been here since the start. They realize hey, if I'm going to compete on this team, this ridiculously good roster, if I have any chance of making it, I have to do extra things. So to me, that was really, really cool to watch. And I'm just going to throw out one more point there. So the Jalen Weidermeyer thing was pretty exciting to me because I think his tape in college, I only watched a very brief amount of it, not much, so I can't really speak to it a lot. But he looks good when he plays football. His combine was horrendous. He was one of the worst combines of all time. He produced an RAS, the relative athletic score, of 0.98, which is bottom, what is it? He ranked 916 out of 1,014 tight ends measured since 1987. Really, really bad athletic. He doesn't look that unathletic on the field. He looks good, but he's play style is what's going to make him make this team. So to see him out there working on pass pro sets or blocking sets was pretty impressive to me. One other thing just to throw out there, because I just looked this up, I was wondering, I looked up Tim Settle's RAS, his relative athletic score, when he was drafted in 2018. Tim Settle's RAS was 0.88. Which was worse than Weidermeyer, and Weidermeyer had arguably one of the worst combine performances of all time. So one thing I always say about RAS, yeah, there is some important parts to it. It's interesting to look at, but it isn't the end all and be all. Stephon Diggs was average by RAS, for instance. A lot of these players were. And I don't think just because you had a bad RAS, it means you're going to have a bad NFL career. And Tim Settle might disprove that. I mean, people on the Commanders fan base still wanted him. I had the same experience as Thomas. And that's why also Jalen Weidermeyer, maybe he just had a bad combine. Okay. And maybe that's why he didn't get drafted. Yeah. So hopefully all these guys are gems in disguise, and they all work out for the Bills. But man, combine or training camp was fun. Got to see a lot. And again, it's fun to watch this Bills team in particular because they're so talented. Like, and the talent oozes when you watch them practice. And I can't imagine going and sitting at, let's say, the Jets practice and watching that absolute catastrophe. That just must be embarrassing to watch. And that's what this was like for 20 years. So.
I haven't heard anything about the Jets practices. Do you have stories?
No, I have no stories. I just imagine Zach Wilson trying to throw a football, and it makes me laugh.
Okay.
Suppose it's got to be better than Tua, though. So
true.
That's what I would figure. Like he's good, right? I mean, the Mom Slayer. Oh God.
The Mom Slayer.
All right. Well, I think that is where we're gonna call it today. Chris, thank you for joining us in the comments. Are you going again? You said you went today, so did you get 2 tickets? Did you get multiple? If so, perhaps next week or the week after. As you can tell, we're kind of fluid with our scheduling, like we've kind of been doing every other week. But I definitely want to get like a uniform talk in there because there's really quick. There's just been a lot of talk about Bills red helmets, and there's been so many teams coming out with alternate helmets, and some of them, like a lot of them, are alternates that they never even had before. So I'm a little irritated that all these teams are coming up with just new helmets to use, and the Bills aren't even like announcing their red ones yet. So I want to get into that possibly next week. I think I'm looking at our schedule. Like we may do one more week off. After that, we have. So I'm thinking our next show will be, we can do a uniform discussion, and then we'll be about a week away from our first preseason game. So we can kind of talk about things we want to see in that preseason game.
For sure.
So yeah. Okay, Chris. Yeah, this was the only one, but he got some of his comments in and we read them off. But so thank you for your participation. So, again, next week we may take off again, but the week after, expect some uniform discussion and some preseason week 1. Like, wow, it's crazy. Like it's crazy like how fast like training camp happens, and then it's like 100 miles an hour. Absolutely, Chris. Love to have you on as well. And as he said, 53-man roster. Obviously, that'll probably come after preseason. But anyhow, we're so close to seeing a Bills football game.
I can taste it.
Yeah. And I actually like, after the COVID year where we had no preseason, at the end, I kind of missed not having a preseason because, like, man, like all those like depth guys that you want to be able to see play for like a quarter or a half, but then we need
a new Christian Wade, man.
Yeah.
We need a new Christian Wade. We need a new Brandon Riley. I don't even know. Is there even room for a Brandon Riley this season?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So we may
not. Quarterback's going to be the one, though, man. I'll tell you, that's where you're going to see a lot of those tight battles because there's some good ones. Real good ones.
If anything, don't mention your camp crush out loud because then Brandon Beane will cut him because nobody tells him what to do. I mean, I honestly thought Jacob Hollister was going to be tight end too, and then they're like, nah, he's gone.
Nah, we're good.
Yeah. He had like, he had like a preseason game that was like, if it was a regular season game, it would have been like one of the best performances by a tight end leading up to that. And they're like, nah, he's gone. But just preseason. Anyways, that's what it's looking like for us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening when you do. And go Bills.
Go Bills.